So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining our panel. I'm Amanda Schifino. I'll be hosting today, and I'm a product marketing manager for Pages at Yext. If you're a marketer, the conversation that we're having today matters more than ever because whether you're ready for it or not, AI is rewriting the rules of digital discovery. And you're probably asking yourself, and I hear this question all the time, these questions, how do I make sure that my brand shows up in AI search? Can I even affect that? And if I can, how do I do it at scale? These are the questions that marketers are grappling with, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack today. What's changing, what's misunderstood, and where brands should be focusing their time and their energy. I'm very lucky to be joined today by two people who are not only thinking deeply about this, but are actually helping teams take action. Today, we have Melissa Todisco, our Senior Director of Product Marketing, and Adam Abernathy, our Senior Director of Yext Research. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so let's kick things off by grounding the shift in what we're actually seeing out in the wild. Melissa, I will start with you. How is AI changing how people discover businesses online?
The biggest change in how people are discovering businesses online is that AI search engines like ChatGPT and Gemini deliver answers, not blue links. So the other thing is that AI search is no longer only for early adopters. Research from Bain shows that 80% of consumers now rely on AI summaries at least 40% of the time. And so what this means for marketers is that brands no longer just need to be ranked by Google, they need to be cited by AI. But as a marketer, the question is, well, how do I do that? There isn't a playbook. That's not the playbook that we've been executing for however many years. But what we are finding is that we're actually releasing new research this Thursday of this week that shows that 86% of AI citations come from managed or influenced sources, such as websites, listings, and reviews. And so this is great news for marketers because other research has suggested that brands need to focus on showing up in Wikipedia or Reddit, but that is not the case when you apply real-world context to citation analysis. So things like when you take into consideration the location of the user or the type of question they're answering or the industry that they're researching, what we see is that the citation patterns shift dramatically away from generic sources like Wikipedia or Reddit and toward more brand-owned or managed sources.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I think we can all really feel this shift and this change in our own consumer behavior. You mentioned Yext Research, and Adam is on that team doing really deep research into these LLMs. So Adam, I wanted to kind of ask the same question to you, because I know you've been diving into this topic a bit. Is there anything from your research that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I kind of like to frame this as kind of like the collapse of optionality. Traditional search engines have given us a choice. It was a set of options, whereas AI provides the user guidance and a pathway. It's directing them into a specific avenue. And so the challenge is no longer can people find me, but will the machine decide that I'm the answer? And so the internet's no longer nascent, and we've reached this point where our interactions are increasingly are about saving time and gaining efficiency and value from those interactions. And AI is really it's really good at creating those optimizations, and consumers responding favorably to that. We see this in the explosive adoption rate of ChatGPT, which is the fastest adopted technology of all time. In just over 1,000 days, ChatGPT has amassed over 700 million weekly active users, which is about 10% of the global population. So keeping that in mind, and then also kind of revisiting the old traditional model of search, visibility used to mean showing up in a list of 10 links. And users would compare those links and they would eventually make their own choices. But with AI, that optionality is collapsing. And search has really gone from being a list of options to really competing to be part of that single distilled answer. And what we're seeing in not only talking to customers and doing market research, but also the data research itself says that businesses, you're not really competing for clicks anymore. You're really competing to be treated as fact. And that's where I think the big change for the marketers is, which is the focus. And I think the focus on the funnel is in the wrong place, because these new technologies, they're really removing that top of funnel. And so it's there needs to be more of a concern about direct actions and more about creating influence and stuff like that, because impressions are really being kind of compressed into an authoritative response. That's a pretty high bar that we haven't faced before.
Mm-hmm. I really liked the phrase that you used, will the machine decide if I'm the answer? And you and I worked on a blog, mostly you, a little help from me, how to design your website for AI. And you say, and you argue that websites should now be designed for AI first and the human second, which is really bold and different than how we've done things in the past. So I kind of wanted to know more, why such a bold statement?
Well, sometimes I just like to be confrontational, but my statement's not without merit. It's most CMS tools are a result of our traditional thinking about web design, which have been centered around the visual experience and not the machine experience. Consider that today 51% of all web traffic is from bots. And so if your website isn't designed to be interacted with by a bot, then it's missing some of its most core functionality because it's neglecting one of its main users. And much of that user is web crawlers and answer engines. And so as everyone is in this room is probably experiencing that drop in organic traffic, it's not that there's less overall engagement with your brands, it's just that often that engagement is happening on a different medium. And a lot of that other medium is stuff like zero-click search, Gemini, ChatGPT, et cetera. And so kind of keeping all that in mind, answer engines and AI, they reward structured content, the stuff like schema, open graph data, knowledge graph, entities kind of being linked together and inside your pages, because these LLMs don't just read the page, they're extracting meaning. And the only way they can do that is with well-structured data sources. And so kind of the punchline here is AI rewards structure, not style. And it's also very extremely important to remember that Google and to a limited degree Apple are the only two crawlers that render JavaScript. And in non-technical terms, that means that if your website's relying on complicated frameworks that like render the page dynamically or they require interactivity to engage with your page, most likely you're entirely invisible to AI crawlers, which means that you're entirely visible to the AI system as a whole. And so designing for AI doesn't mean making things ugly. It just means making sure that the content is machine intelligible before being stylistically appealing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so machines first, style second, and really, and this is something we've talked about, is it's really all for the human, but how we approach it has changed. So how would you say the shift in priority impacts the way that multi-location brands approach their web strategy?
Yeah, so first of all, a lot of the when it comes to local search, people aren't just necessarily going to websites. They're using other tools to find you and to source you, be it a Maps program or Google, something like that. And so at the heart of it, local search is about finding your business. And when you have a local page that is designed for that particular location and to a certain degree, like that region or that sub-region, you're just shortening that distance between your brand and what you want to be represented by and what you want people to know about you and the indexing process. And so when that single page creates that single reference point, and AI can get a really good idea of what that location and that area can offer without having to try to connect a lot of pieces together. The more work you kind of do on the front, it will. We see that's rewarded. We're about to release a huge paper tomorrow, absolutely groundbreaking research, where and one of the findings in there is we prove that all the big three AI models consider location when formulating that result. And so my opinion here is you want to maintain your normal brand presence. That's really important. But when it comes to your local strategy, which is also, you have your brand presence, but also if you're in a local multi-tenant, type thing, you really want to have, landing pages for each location, because these help the crawlers, like I said, connect the dots. And we're talking all this stuff like your promotions, like marketing offers, available services, CTAs, putting that all in one space. It just kind of shortens that distance. And you're ultimately more appetizing to these models, and then making you likely more citable.
Mm-hmm. I think someone from product put it to me of these LLMs are content hungry, and that really hit home from a marketer perspective. So Melissa, I'd like to switch to you and go from this really deep research and theory to those practical marketer takeaways. So before we dive into the actual execution, I know it's always important to understand where you're starting from as a marketer. So how should marketers assess where they're standing today?
So the first step really is to benchmark your AI visibility against the competition to figure out where to focus. So do you need to focus on adding photos to listings, or maybe you need to generate more reviews, or maybe your web pages aren't performing, and really understanding how do you stack up to the competition at that local level. We've built our own product called Scout that allows you to do that at both the brand and the hyper local level. So that's step one, kind of benchmark and measure where you stand. Number two, since we know that websites are a top source for AI citations, it's also really important to audit your website performance, accessibility, best practices, and especially schema markup, because it's similar to many of the things that Adam was saying. It's really important to make sure that your website has valid structured data to make sure that these AI search engines can be crawling your page. Otherwise, you risk being invisible in AI search. The other thing that's important is to do this for both your brand website and your local pages. So local pages, to Adam's point earlier, are becoming increasingly important for your visibility strategy. There's two signals that we're seeing there. One, Google recently announced that dedicated local landing pages are required for listings to be ranked in traditional search. And so while many people are already probably doing this, the fact that they've changed those guidelines is a signal that this is important content to Google. The second thing is our research shows that local pages are a top source for unbranded queries where there is a high opportunity to capture demand. Now, all of this makes sense because AI wants to get the right answer. And so if a user has a question like, what is the best Italian restaurant near me that has gluten-free pasta and outdoor seating? AI would much rather source the answer from a local page than a brand website where it might be unclear if every location has outdoor seating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I just put some vocabulary words in the chat for anybody confused by the term local pages. We're talking location pages, service pages, product pages, promotion pages, maybe professional pages, all localized to a certain location. So Melissa, once you as a company know where you are, what's the low-hanging fruit? Where should they start?
I think we see the biggest opportunity being how do you scale local intent pages, similar to the data that I was citing. Now, most brands have a location page that has their address and store hours and phone number, but not all brands have invested the time and effort to create intent pages that includes all of those details you mentioned, like products, services, maybe local events, promotions. We've worked with many of our customers to create intent pages to help them rank for services or products that potentially aren't associated with their brand. So for example, we worked with a coffee chain that wanted to sell more energy refresher drinks. So we created intent pages specifically for that product line. And as a result, they were able to start ranking not only for coffee shops near me, but also energy drinks near me, helping them to increase that foot traffic. So I think as marketers, there's always been a big opportunity to capture demand with unbranded Google intent queries. And now that opportunity has only expanded with AI search.
I love that example of the coffee shop and the energy drinks. It just simplifies it so much. Adam, for you, so I get this question a lot when I'm talking to customers, and I know you've been researching this. Why are local pages so important, and why can't you just optimize your homepage, your brand site, your .com?
Well, there's a few facets here. From a technical perspective, it's important to remember that like the AI isn't like they don't index your website the same way Google does. It's reading and it's extracting kind of nuggets or parcels of information from your site, and then it's putting that kind of into its larger kind of corpus or canon of knowledge. And when it's trying to read and understand your site, it's also trying to link different pieces of information about you and your brand, together and trying to make sense of that. And so that's kind of like the overarching technical theme there. Also, inside of that, remember that these websites or these crawlers, they don't interact with any kind of the tools on your site. And so if you have like a location finder, to find locations, or the only way to find locations through like a location finder, then those locations are basically invisible to it, because it's not going to try to probe and interact with all of that. It's simply looking for, looking at usually like your sitemap, and then it's going and looking at those individual location pages there to understand that stuff. So if that stuff is hidden behind some sort of interactivity, wall in that sense, they're just invisible there. So when you have the location page, you're creating like an actual referenceable asset that the crawlers can find, they can parse, index, and then ultimately return back to consumer. And then from the marketer's perspective, AI and local search queries, they're becoming extremely long tail and intent driven. The average Google query was around 10 words, and now AI queries are running, around 30 or even longer. And local pages, they enable brands to establish in-depth informational coverage across various services and regions and customer needs. And so the more that you can put there on those individual pages, the more, kind of information coverage. Because what these models do is they're looking for things that are both relevant and salient. And salient meaning, what is a little bit different about this, or what new does this web page bring that I don't already know? And so things that tend to have more salience tend to rank higher, because it's something new that the model can go, oh, there's new information there, but this is more comprehensive than what I had beforehand. And, kind of going back to what I said at the top, the Googles are really about options, whereas AI is about providing answers. LLMs really focus on, there's an entire body of research being done on this, both we're doing it and others, of what kind of content AI wants to reference. In the leading theory right now is basically looks for stuff that it can lift, right? It wants to just take stuff and then cite it. And so it lifts content and cites it. So when you have local pages that showcase something about that location, it can just grab that and, put it into the result. And so, being competitive means optimizing for the entity level. And a homepage just really can't answer all those questions. So you really need to have that larger information footprint to get to all those questions. Because when it's all said and done, you want to get cited. To get cited, you want that direct link that then gets them from that AI response back to your branded property, where then they can convert or create some action.
Yeah. And I think it's all really exciting, because this is all an owned asset that we have complete control over, what content is on there, how many pages we've created. And our customers who do this see such great results. So Melissa, back to you. What are the biggest barriers of scaling local intent pages today?
The biggest challenge with scaling local content is really the current web process as it stands today. I've led many web projects over my career, and the process is always painful, especially when you're starting from a blank slate instead of a template. There's just such a tremendous amount of back and forth between brand design and developers. And that's not even for a multi-location brand where you have to scale the same content across hundreds or even thousands of locations. And so the question is, in the AI era, all of that work may not even matter, because a human may never even visit your page. We're spending so much time trying to make sure that everything is just right. And so it's so beautiful and succinct. But the question is that even needed? And now, of course, I'm not saying pages need to look good, because if a human shows up on them, we want to have a positive brand image. But the question is, or I should say, we believe a new process is needed, where marketers have the ability to quickly spin up thousands of local pages using AI optimized no-code templates in days instead of months. That developers aren't even required, and marketers can ultimately control how their brand shows up in AI search.
Yep. I really love that. Pages need to look good and be AI optimized. And so with that, that's the end of our panel portion. And I did want to make everyone aware of some resources that we have on the event. I know Logan posted in the chat, but you can go to the chat tab and it'll say docs, and that's where you can find everything. You can also find a link if you're interested in requesting a demo. We're happy to show you our new tool. And now I'd like to open it up for a few minutes of Q&A. Okay, Adam, I feel like this is a good one for you with our research coming out. Do we have sources on the need for local pages?
What do you mean by sources?
I would say proof that local pages are important for showing up in AI search.
Yes.
That's my guess on the question.
Yeah, we have a paper coming out Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern, will be the release, and we looked at about 6.8 million AI citations, and we categorized them into different groups of things that you can control to not control, and we subcategorized all that into different types of websites and those things. And so yes, we've done this. We've looked at it as a whole industry, and we have a fast follow to do one for fins, and then we will do, after that one comes out in a few weeks from now, we will release one for healthcare. It's going really deep into those particular industries. And we'll continue kind of doing all those analysis. So yes, the short answer is yes. We've built up an enormous data set, one of the largest that we know of looking at several different types of questions, ways of asking the questions, and then ultimately understanding kind of the recipe or the formula that these models bring, or you go and get different citations for different types of questions and for different industries.
Amazing. Do you know how they sign up to get that research tomorrow?
Yes, shameless plug. Research comes out Thursday, but shameless plug, yext.com/research. And there's a link down there to sign up to just get on the mailing list for whenever we release new stuff, as well as you can also see current articles, current research. And then if you want to become a research partner, there's a kind of a separate program there that there's also an option to engage that way.
Perfect. Okay, Adam, I think this one is for you too. What is the future of robots.txt? My site is currently blocking chatbot crawlers, but we're still showing up in AI results.
Oh, great question. Okay, so robots.txt and AI.txt are both they're considered kind of voluntary controls. Crawlers don't have to respect them. They're like, hey, I would wish you that would respect this, but they don't have to respect it. Most of the models do respect them, and most of the crawlers do respect them. But the thing is they don't really have to. And also that information could be coming from other resources too. So another crawler, another source might be ingesting your content, and then AI is getting that stuff from those other ones. So yeah, it's a bit of a loaded question, but the two, you want to configure them, and most credible crawlers will respect them, but they don't have to respect them. I hope that answers the question. It's a really nuanced one. There's a lot that goes into that topic.
Okay, here's one from Patrick. Where do you see unique opportunities for small businesses as opposed to massive corporations in the new AI search landscape? And I think that could go to either one of you, whoever feels inspired.
I'll take it because I think that Adam took the previous two, so I'll take that. I think that the opportunity is similar for small businesses. You don't have the complexities of having to manage multiple locations, but the idea that publishing large amounts of information and context on your website is an important strategy to making sure that you're showing up in AI search.
Absolutely. Okay, this is one from Sasha. Do we know yet how stable or unstable AI results are? Our site will show up one day in an AI overview summary and then not show a few days later. Adam, maybe for you?
Yeah, it's just because you show up once doesn't mean that you're always going to show up. And so there's a lot of instability there. Some of it is also based off of, because all these models, they have memory and context. And so maybe it showed you something once and you didn't engage with it. Maybe it'll show you something different again, later on. So you have to think it kind of in terms of of a whole bunch of times that we queried it. How many times did we show up? Kind of what's the probability that we show up? Just because you showed up once doesn't mean that it's not for sure set in stone after that.
Okay, here's one from Cody. Are there any tools or methods available to test if a web page is readable or indexed by AI?
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. First of all, if you like running stuff like Lighthouse scores, we find that just kind of like those basic kind of core web vitals, if those are all in kind of like the green zone, that's usually a good sign. one of the easiest tests to do is to load your web page and go into your developer tools and turn off JavaScript. If the page still loads and it still behaves as you would expect it to behave, maybe not have all the animations and menus, but if the content is still there, that's usually a really good litmus test to know that if the model was to find this, it will be able to understand it.
Okay, this one's from Giorgio. What location should businesses that operate out of a single headquarter but serve the entire US target, for example? Ooh, there's another question I read in the Q&A that's similar, so I'm going to ask that one as well. It's what if you are a local business but don't have local brick and mortar locations? I feel like the answer might be similar there. Melissa, do you want to tackle this one?
Sure, I can take this. I think it's the same concept of unbranded queries. So if you want to show up at the local level, are you creating searches that show that your brand is relevant at that local level? The other thing to think about that I've heard customers doing is focusing on geographies, because again, that's another way that customers might search of like in my state or in my region. So really the opportunities are limitless.
Okay, this is from William. Since there are so many AI platforms that have a hard time reading JavaScript, does it make sense to not use JSON-LD schema markup, or can all AI platforms interpret it? Adam, how about you?
Yeah, all the models love JSON-LD, or at least from what we understand, they tend to like JSON-LD quite a bit, and Open Graph encodings. So it kind of combining the two. When you look at the models, or when you look at the websites that are cited the most, we see a lot of both JSON-LD and Open Graph encodings. JSON-LD doesn't, the way if it's properly encoded, it just shows up as a text slug that it can easily be ingested in. So it doesn't need JavaScript to render that, because it just knows that the way it's tagged as JSON-LD, as our application tag JSON-LD, and then that's a block of structured data. So yes, definitely we see them very favorable.
Okay, here is a pre-submitted question. How can multi-location brands scale structured local pages quickly without IT support? How about Melissa?
So this for Yext specifically, the way that we do that is we have our knowledge graph that links directly to the local pages, and so what that allows teams to do is we have our no-code page builder template that quickly sets up your standard page, and then fields are mapped directly from your knowledge graph, and so within literally a few minutes you can create hundreds or thousands of pages based on whatever your knowledge graph entities are in Yext. So if you're interested in seeing it, definitely recommend scheduling a demo, and one of our solutions engineers would be happy to show you that live in action.
Okay, this is from Mark. Are there reliable sources for understanding brand versus competitor performance in AI citations /AI search for local businesses? And I think either of you could take this one.
I mean, like Scout's a phenomenal tool. Scout is designed to ultimately kind of scan the landscape, and that's what it does. It looks at traditional search. It's going to getting your 40 competitors for whatever keywords that you put in. It's running pretty deep, and it gets a lot of metrics about them. It does the same for in the AI side. It's going to the major models, and it's asking them a series of questions about you, and not just necessarily about you, but it's keeping those very objective questions. The way we built it was it's able to understand kind of what the consumer sees if they were standing at a specific location on the globe, and they were asking questions about tacos or dentists or whatever. And so stuff like that is a really solid tool to understand it. Melissa, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that one.
I think you covered it.
Okay, one from Julian. For websites that have heavy JavaScript, what do you recommend on helping those websites rank for AI search? Maybe Adam?
If the JavaScript is preventing text from rendering on the page, like if that JavaScript is required to, whatever kind of the meat and potatoes of your web page is, if the JavaScript required for that to render, I would focus on trying to depreciate that out, find a way to get where you don't need to have JavaScript to render the core stuff on the page. If it's got a lot of JavaScript, but it's more kind of those ancillary or like kind of user experience type stuff or like animations, that's not really going to matter too much. But if that JavaScript is with basically like kind of withholding information from the crawler, then I would say like I would prioritize trying to remove that or to depreciate that out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a pre-submitted question. How can marketers evaluate whether their current website content is optimized for AI search?
I'll take that one. Like we've talked a lot about the technical metrics to look for, speed, does it render without JavaScript, all that kind of good stuff. So there's that. Focusing a lot on semantic markup, so having that really good, clean H1, H2, H3 type structure, using those paragraph tags correctly, not getting away from that, like the div soup land for all the web developers out there. So stuff like that is really going to help you from the technical perspective. In terms of the content, we have research streams where we're starting to look at this, but so what we're seeing, but mostly what other folks are seeing too in this space is just shorter kind of chunks of content that are really tight and concise and human written. AI doesn't want to reference stuff it thinks that it already had. And so it's like stuff that is human written, it's original, or at least feels original, that tends to work better, and just also short, tight, concise blocks, because a lot of times in these AI responses, it's gonna, it quotes it right, so it's trying to lift it. So think of this sentence, is this sentence kind of liftable and put somewhere else? So you kind of want that nice kind of tight, pithy type narrative. It's really an emerging space of kind of what this is right now. In terms of like the research and these models, it's really important to understand Google used to roll out 4 updates a year. Now it's kind of monthly. These AI models are re-indexing and running updates almost weekly. And so I really want to advise against trying to game the system, but really just kind of focus on creating stuff that people want to read and engage with, because that tends to perform better in the long run.
Yeah. Something we've been thinking about and recommending at Yext is FAQs as a nice example of that liftable content, where there's the question and there's the blurb that an LLM could lift. And so instead of, maybe back in the day, we'd recommend, 5 really strong FAQs so that the reader can select what they need. Now you do a lot more to make sure that you're giving the LLMs that right content to lift. Okay, I think we have time for one more question, Logan. This is from Brian. What about AI-generated video content? Data around what ranks higher between unique versus AI versus hybrid. This stems from an industry drive to produce more video leveraging AI tools. And I think he means, like, do we have any data about what ranks higher between unique versus AI versus hybrid? Adam, have you come across anything in your research? Melissa?
We continually see that AI favors original human content. And I think that the video stuff is relatively new. There's not, to my knowledge, no one's really built up a large enough data set to really go through the statistical rigor of evaluating that. But we find over and over and over and time again, AI tends to favor original human content, performs better in the long run.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's what I've been hearing as well. Okay, so we are at time. And before we wrap, I want to leave you with one thing, really. It's that what we've talked about today, it's not just theory about the future, it's already happening. AI is reshaping how people discover, evaluate, and choose brands. And the brands that are showing up in these moments aren't doing it by accident. They're doing it with intention and with the right tools. And that's why we've built the new Yext Pages, which gives marketers like you the power to create these AI-optimized, schema-rich, content-rich local pages at scale without having to rely on your IT teams. So if you want to see how this actually works, what it looks like, click on the link in the Docs tab to request a demo. We'd love to show you how you can take control of your brand's visibility in both AI and traditional search. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Melissa. This was really wonderful. Thanks for all the great questions from the audience. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.